gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Where are you now? This is the report regarding effects of COVID-19 on the British this afternoon. I will tell others to come over soon.
Hello? I'm at home now. I will there as soon as possible and thank you for the notice. See you there, Kama.
Alright, see you there.
Bye.
Bye.
1 hour later.
You know, right? I told you before, I don't want to trust you.
Hi guys, sorry for being late.
It's okay, Miza. Fit is also taking her drink. You can just have a sit now. We'll begin shortly.
Very good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this meeting today. Today, we will discuss about the impact of COVID-19 to the tourism sector. Tourism is a social, cultural, and economic which entails the movement of people to countries or places outside their usual environment for personal or business professional purpose. For developing nations and emerging economies, tourism presents fantastic prospects. It boosts the local economy, supports the construction of local infrastructure, generates jobs, protects the environment, preserve cultural heritage, and fight poverty and inequality. Tourism is a major source of income for many countries. One of the countries is our own country, Malaysia. But unfortunately, a serious disease called COVID-19 has appeared in Malaysia in 2020. The first case of COVID-19 in Malaysia appeared in Malaysia on January 25, 2020, when a traveller from China travelling via Singapore tested positive for the virus. This is where the outbreak of COVID-19 in Malaysia began. The COVID-19 pandemic has impacted the tourism industry due to the resulting travel restriction as well as the slumps in demand among travellers. As the Vice President of this club will explain for the literature review section. As we know, COVID-19 started appearing at the end of 2020, and this has caused the government to implement the Movement Control Order (MCO) to prevent the spread of COVID-19 virus. Due to this, tourism sector has been affected, and the first impact was that most of the companies, organizations, and corporations are downsizing, where many hotels, airlines, homestays, and others involved in the tourism sector have to close because they do not have sufficient sources of income to continue to survive as long as the MCO is implemented. This is due to no tourists or local citizens being allowed to enter or exit the country due to restrictions. For instance, hotels that are not in the tourist spots where they have gone bankrupt and had to close their businesses due to lack of sources of income to continue operating. Is laid off of workers. Many workers involved in the tourism sector had to be laid off because the employer could not afford to pay their wages. This makes those who are laid off no sources of income, and this leads to stress and pressure on themselves. This has made them unemployed and difficult to support themselves and their families during the MCO, and this has causes them to fall into poverty because there is no money to buy necessities. The next impact was increase in unemployment rate. Since many workers have been laid off, the unemployment rate is increasing. This will cause the economic activity to slow down because households are more inclined to divert their existing money as savings rather than spending.
And to explain about the chart briefly, it shows that unemployment rate was increased in 2020 where COVID-19 had appeared in Malaysia. And the last impact was decrease in gross domestic product GDP. Based on GDP chart, it shows a drastic drop from 2019 to 2020, and this can be proven that the tourism sector has a great impact on the Malaysian economy because this sector is one of the most important sectors for the country's economic growth.
Based on my macroeconomic theory that have three, which is economic growth, employment and inflation rate. Firstly, according to the research regarding the economic growth, tourism is one of the sectors most affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, impacting economy, livelihoods, public services and opportunities on all continents. All part of the sector have been affected. Export revenue from tourism could fall by 9-10 billion to 1.2 trillion in 2020. This also have a wider impact and could reduce global GDP by 1.5% to 2.8%. COVID-19 affect the tourism industry worldwide and all the international flight has been cancelled. This industry anticipate being influenced in this way. 60% decline in the airline global seat and hotel 61% of hotel will not make it another 6 months without further federal assistance. Given current and projected travel demand, 77% will be forced to lay off more workers.
What about the employment and inflation rate, Liza?
For that one, regarding the employment rate, although the worldwide health crisis had a significant impact on most economic activity, the tourism sector and the value chain had suffered the most from the movement restriction order. According to the United Nations World Tourism Organization, tourism accounted for 7% of world commerces, ranking third behind foods and chemical. Given that small enterprises account for 18% of worldwide tourism, these firms are particularly vulnerable. The spread of COVID-19 nearly brought the world economy to a halt in 2020. Malaysia is no different as the national economy declined by 5.6% in 2020, owing mostly to limitation placed to control the pandemic. Employment fell 0.8% to 15.0 million person that year. Following that, the number of jobless surged dramatically by 39.9%, owing mostly to an increase in layoff and limited work possibilities. The unemployment rate increased to 4.5%, above 4% for the first time since 1993. And about the inflation rate, the tourist sectors and related economic activities in this country have incurred losses, with Malaysia losing 100 billion in the outbreak began last year. This is a significant loss since tourist arrival in Malaysia decreased by 83.4% in 2020, while Malaysian tourist receipts fell by 85.3% from 86.14 billion ringgit in 2009 to 12.69 billion last year. In general, the COVID-19 pandemic occurred in 2020 has indirectly reflected as Malaysia recorded a negative inflation of 1.2%, which is decreased. The most affected group were transportation, followed by housing, water, electricity, gas and other foods, and clothing and footwear. Miscellaneous goods and services increased by 2.7%, followed by food and beverage, and also communication.
Shown in the graph, the statistic of international tourism entering Malaysia in the tourism sector. International tourism that entered Malaysia every year from 1996 until 2019 shows an increase in the number of tourists in accordance with the improvement of Malaysia's economic development, which attracts tourists to come and travel in Malaysia. At the beginning of 2020, the number of tourists entering Malaysia has shown a significant and very large decrease due to the spread of the COVID-19 epidemic that has hit the world. Every country, including Malaysia, has closed national borders to prevent foreign tourists from entering the country. This is because to prevent the spread of the epidemic if the tourist sector continues during that period, when all economic sectors, including the tourism sector, are forced to close, which result in Malaysia not being able to move anywhere because the government has set a movement control order (MCO), which caused the people not to be able to do any economic sector activities during the order. If the economic sector is open as long as the MCO is carried out, especially the tourism sector, it will cause problem for all nations to prevent the spread of the epidemic from spreading to the public. You can see the publication presents statistics on performance of domestic tourism Malaysia in year 2021, which consists of visitors' arrivals, tourism expenditure, travelling pattern, and social demographic profile at domestic visitors. If you look at the main indicator section, domestic tourists, number of trips, and also total spending in 2021 decreased very drastically from the previous year due to the COVID-19 pandemic that hit our country and caused the MCO to be carried out and border closure. This has a bad effect on the Malaysian tourism sector. Based on the graph given, shows the statistic Malaysian domestic tourism expenditure from year 2012 to 2021. The graph shows that Malaysian domestic tourism is increasing until 2019 and at the beginning of 2020 has shown a very significant decrease due to COVID-19 pandemic.
I will also tell you about the discussion on this paper. There are a lot of articles written regarding COVID-19. According to the article written by the author Faizal on 2020, the announcement about the first imported COVID-19 case was from Wuhan, China, announced by our neighbouring country, Singapore, on January 23, 2020. It shows that the threat posed by COVID-19 in Malaysia became more apparent. It was also the first successful case for the Republic. And on January 25, 2020, the first such case in Malaysia was discovered and it led to the discovery of the 8 close contacts in Johor, Malaysia, in the course of 6 days only, and it was a case brought in from Wuhan, China. According to the author Abdullah, the first Malaysian to test positive for COVID-19 claimed to have just returned from a business trip to a neighbouring country where they had also met with a delegation from China on February 3, 2020. On February 27, 2020, the hospital released all 22 of the aforementioned incidents, and soon after that, on March 31, 2020, Malaysia took 3 steps to handle all the reported incidents. Majority of the initial recorded cases came from those who had been exposed to those who had imported the disease into the nation, with China serving as the main source of those incidents. Only 2 cases with local transmission were identified. The author Fu also said in a different article that in recent years, international travel have gotten increasingly difficult. It is especially prominent immediately following the Malaysian government's crackdown on lodging, dining and nightlife establishments. Malaysia tourism earnings are on the decline, which explains why the proportion of foreign visitors is declining. Lastly, based on the article wrote by Parim Banayagam, the COVID-19 outbreak caused a more than 50% decrease in tourist expenditure in the first half of the year. According to Datuk Seri Nancy Shukri, Minister of Tourism, Arts and also Culture, the figures were down to 68.2% and 69.8% from the same time last year, respectively. The COVID-19 virus epidemic also cost Malaysia RM45 billion in lost tourist spendings in the first half of the year. The hotel and tourism sector has turned into a risky venture for those involved as in a result of curfews and absolute lockdown policies in many locations.
To conclude this meeting, the COVID-19 disease has caused many negative impacts on our country. One of the most severe impact industry is tourism, which necessitates both urgent and long-term recovery measures. Tourism destination and attraction were closed, important festivals and events were postponed or cancelled, and several nationally restricted public gatherings, both indoor and outdoor, as a result of a global air transport crisis. The effects of COVID-19 on global tourism were profound and immediate. In reaction to steps intended to limit the virus, the first tourist attractions were shut down. Additionally, it's probably that tourism-related activity won't start right away and might wait until other company services have resumed operations. Furthermore, the number of tourists is decreasing due to the Malaysian government imposing restrictions and travel bans such as movement control order (MCO). The changes that happen to tourism after the existence of COVID-19 will also be a great answer for our country.
Oh, I can see now that there is a lot of things happening in our country and in the span of these 2 years, so it has affected our country, so including the tourism sector.
Malaysia has lost a lot of money because of this COVID-19 pandemic, and I think that has made our tourism sector one of the most affected sector in the whole Malaysia.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So I think that is all for the meeting today. Can we wrap this up? I think. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Do you want to grab lunch after this?
Yeah, sure.
So what do you want to eat?
I did.
You?
But I want KFC.
So how?
I've been KFC for so long.
So how? So one of us, should we buy both? So should we buy both and then eat here?
I agree with that.
Okay, can. Whatever now?
Yes, let's go.